Okay, so as I said, we did call the meeting to order at 2 p.m. And as we begin, I just want to have Crystal share, should be laughing about it. Some meetings start with a prayer, but I want us to keep somebody, and she's going to share.
I'd like to make sure that everyone keeps Miss Carly Meyer. She's the mayor of Hemet in your thoughts and prayers. She announced on 4th of July that she found out she has stage 4 breast cancer and stage 2 brain cancer. So if we can keep her and our thoughts and prayers and her family, we'd appreciate it.
Okay, we're going to begin with the Pledge of Allegiance like we do at all meetings. Allow us this opportunity to gather. And I'm going to surprise Chris Gray and ask you to lead us and to thank you for keeping us a ship as we are welcoming our new leader. And can you please lead us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Chris. Okay, Janice, can you now do roll call for us?
Absolutely. When I call your jurisdiction, if you would please state your name. City of Banning.
David Happy.
Beaumont. Calamasa. Wendy Hewitt. Thank you, ma'am. Canyon Lake.
Casey Castillo.
Corona.
Jackie Casillas.
Eastville.
Christian Dinko.
Hemet.
Russ Brown.
Garupa Valley.
Chris Barajas.
Lake Elsinore.
Brian Tisdale.
Menifee.
Natalie Flair.
Moreno Valley.
Victoria Baca.
Murrieta.
Lori Stone.
Norco.
Kevin Dash.
Paris.
Rita Rogers.
Riverside.
Ronaldo Fierro.
San Jacinto.
Crystal Ruiz.
Temecula. Wildemar.
Ben Benoit here.
County of Riverside, District 1. District 2.
Karen Spiegel?
District 3. District 5.
Jeff Hewitt.
Eastern Municipal Water District.
Phil Pauley.
Thank you, sir. Western Municipal Water District.
Brenda Denstead, good afternoon.
Riverside County Superintendent of Schools. And WRCOG TAC Chair. That concludes roll call, and we do have quorum.
Well, didn't it totally conclude? Because one of the most important roll calls is we have somebody new up here with us. And I just want to take a moment, off agenda. Sorry, Janice, you're going to find I go off agenda. I want to have you introduce yourself, because a lot of people don't know that you're here with us and who you are and where you came from, just a brief, so we can welcome you.
Well, thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Kurt Wilson, and I am, as of 2 weeks ago today, the Executive Director of WRCOG, and I am very pleased to be here. I have been out of the area for the last 14 or so years in the Sacramento area. My time here began as a council member locally, then went off to be a city manager in a number of places and a little time in state and in a few other places, but I'm very pleased to be back in the Inland Empire and specifically with WRCOG, and very, very pleased to be here.
Well, thank you for joining us, and we are excited for your leadership on moving us to the next step as we bring everybody back to this meeting in person. Okay, public comment. At this time, members of the public can address this committee regarding items on the agenda and not on the agenda. But at this time, we are asking those that are not on the agenda. Members of the public have the opportunity to speak, and there will not be discussion. Just understand that you have just public comments. No actions can be taken on those items that are not on the agenda. And do we have anybody here for public comment?
I have no requests.
Is there anybody on the line that has a public comment? Okay.
I hear none.
Okay, now we're moving on to the consent calendar. All items on the consent calendar are considered to be routine and may be enacted in one motion. Prior to this motion, to consider any action by the committee, any public comment of any consent item will be heard. Janice, do we have anybody here to talk on any item on the agenda?
No, ma'am.
Does anybody wish to pull any item for this discussion?
I do.
Yes, which item?
I would like to pull 5D, please.
Okay, 5D, anything else? Anybody else? Okay, can I get a motion excluding 5D?
San Jacinto will move it.
Second.
I'm sorry, who seconded?
Rubelli.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, as Janice begins the roll call, one thing I do want to share, for those of you who are new up here, is there anybody brand new up here at the dais? First time? Okay. So on this, there is buttons to your right. So if you want to speak, there's a microphone button. I would push to request to speak. The little arrow on the top left corner will tell you which microphone and which monitor it's going to. So if you want to do that. So, and with that, we're going to go ahead and go.
City of Banning,
Yes.
Beaumont, Calamasa,
Yes.
Canyon Lake,
Yes.
Corona,
Yes.
Eastville,
Yes.
Hemet,
Yes.
Grupa Valley,
Yes.
Lake Elsinore,
Yes.
Menifee,
Yes.
Moreno Valley,
Yes.
Murrieta,
Yes.
Norco,
Yes.
Paris,
Yes.
Riverside,
Yes.
San Jacinto,
Yes.
Temecula, Wildomar,
Yes.
County of Riverside District 1, District 2,
Yes.
District 3, District 5,
Yes.
Eastern Municipal Water District,
Yes.
Western Municipal Water District.
Yes.
That concludes roll call and it passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Madam Secretary, place of order. Sec Temecula is here.
Thank you, Committee Member. Thank you, Committee Member Edwards.
Thank you.
And what was your vote on that last item?
It was aye.
Thank
Thank-
you. Okay. Now we go into our reports and discussion from Cal Cities. Is Aaron Sassy on the line?
I'm sorry, Madam Chair, Committee Member Hewitt pulled item 5D.
Oh, I'm sorry. Some committees go at the end. Sorry. We'll do fine. E or D?
D as in David.
Okay.
This is regarding the Nexus study. I have an issue with it because I feel like we're upping our TUMP fees 3%. And if we do a Nexus study this time next year, we'll be putting another fee on, and I just don't think it's an appropriate time to be doing this.
Anybody else have a comment to make on this item?
I think that in light of the difficulty and the rising costs, of course, in getting any new housing going, certainly TUMP fees affect, everything, not just commercial, but certainly residential units. I think it might be premature. Obviously, when we go ahead and do these things, it leads to almost always being accepted, and I think we're looking at some times where we're going to need to lower some of these costs and not raise them. So I have concerns with that too.
Ms. Casillas?
I'm not a fan of deferring Nexus studies. It doesn't mean that we're going to raise any fees. It just means that we need to understand what the layout looks like. The discussion of raising fees, that's premature. But putting off studies is not a good idea, in my opinion.
Mr. Barajas?
Thank you, Chair. I would agree with Mayor Casillas. I think we need the nexus study to know what the costs are. I'm definitely not in favor. I think most cities are not in favor of temp fee increases. I think even the Admin Finance Committee, we looked at the lowest that we could increase it so we can get to the nexus study to see what the actual costs are going to be, and then have the full board look at that and see, well, what's going to be the impact. Obviously, we all have the competing pressures to build more housing, different kinds of housing. Some of us don't have concerns about that, but I think without knowing what the true cost is, and we've only raised it with the, again, we raised the minimum amount just to carry over until we have the full report. That way, I think we need to have that nexus study to know what that is, because right now we don't, and we definitely don't want to shortchange our cities, our roadways, our infrastructure projects to, how I say, to spite ourselves. So at least having the information, I think, is important.
Ms. Hewitt.
I just think, we have these mandates now where they want us to build more housing, and we're putting more fees on our contractors, and, I don't think there's ever been a time when they've done a nexus study that rates haven't gone up.
Oh, yes, sir.
So I really disagree with this wholeheartedly. I mean, we're going to raise the rates 3%, and then next year we're going to raise them again. Everybody's hurting. Times are tough. We need to get people back to work, and I just don't think it's a good time to be doing this.
Mr. Gray, do you want to implement something?
Turn your microphone. Simply add for the committee's benefit, we're not asking to start work on the nexus study yet. It simply was a notation that it is scheduled. I will point out to you that our administrative plan requires us to do a nexus study. Every time SCAG does the RTP, we are simply noting that we plan on doing one in the fall. I would say, however, if it's the pleasure of the committee to defer the nexus study, before I would offer this, before we start actual work on the nexus study, we will bring the item to you for consideration. At that point, we will give you the reasons why we're doing it. We'll give you the data on why a nexus study update is necessary. We'll point out to you the fact our plan says we're supposed to be doing one. And at that time, if it's the pleasure of the committee to defer that, we can do that at this point. The item that Councilmember Hewitt was noting was simply a discussion of our intention of doing one in the future.
No time set.
Thanks.
Ms. Reeds.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I have my hand up.
That would not be me.
This is City of Temecula, and thank you for your patience. We weren't quite there yet.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
So I think that we have had discussion after discussion after discussion over the fees. And I am not in favor of raising fees either, but sometimes you have to do it. We've procrastinated how long?
There at one point was a roughly 7 to 8 year period when we did not do a nexus study.
Did you say years?
Yes, which
So-
is why the plan was amended to say a nexus study shall be done every 4 years, and we are actually behind. Part of the reason we have waited so long is the SCAG Regional Transportation Plan, which is the basis for a nexus study, was delayed about 6 to 9 months. We really should have actually done one last year, so we're actually out of compliance with our plan. But again, I would say this item will be brought forward to all of our committees to get your permission, so we don't say, so again, if it's the if it's the desire of the committee to defer, again, that certainly staff will follow that direction.
I think that what we have to think about is we all know how hard this job is, and we know that sometimes we have to do things that we don't like to do because it's the right thing to do. And it's not the best time, and it's never the best time. However, we can't keep going another 7 years down the road, because most of the time it's deferred like that because somebody's running for re-election. So this is the time that we buckle up and we do our job and we do what's right. That's all I have.
Okay, Ms. Edwards.
Thank you. So we are overdue for a nexus study. It has been a long time. And in the history of TUMP, there have been many, many times when we have elected not to raise fees. I can't remember a rollback. Doesn't mean we haven't had a rollback, but I know there are many times that we've elected to not raise fees. The other thing is, in these uncertain times, and because it's overdue, we need to establish our current status it'll be, I don't like operating in the dark, and so at least we'll have current status. The third thing is developers will charge the highest price they can for a home because it's market driven. When fees go up, developers have a choice. They can either roll that fee into the price of the home, which means every developer is going to do the same, or they can absorb that fee through their profit margin. So they do have that flexibility. But remember, it's market driven. Regardless of what the fees are, they're going to charge the highest price they can every time for a home. And so would I, because that's private enterprise. So we just consider those three things. We're overdue. We need to establish a baseline now, and then the developers will always charge the highest fee that they can for a home, regardless of what the fees, price, regardless of what the fees are.
Mr. Tisdale.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I'm not mistaken, I think this just is an activities update.
Correct.
So I think maybe the appropriate, instead of discussing, and believe me, we need to have the discussion on the Nexus study, but I don't think this is the place for it. This is just an activities update unless we want to talk about all the items on there for activities update. So I suggest that we move the item forward and go on with the meeting.
Yeah,
Thank you a second.
Madam Chair, if I could just add that we will bring this item back for discussion in September. It will go through all of our committees, our Public Works Committee, our Technical Advisory Committee, our Admin and Finance, and so I anticipate based on our current schedule, this will come back for board action in September.
And City of Norco has their hand raised.
One more question.
You're going to need to
I
wait.
hope when we bring it back, I concur with Brian. I think that's a good idea. But I do hope that when we bring it back, we really talk about the purpose of TUMP. One of the things that's coming out of RCTC and other places is you can build all the houses you want, but the houses are going to be, the cars will be sitting in gridlock. And part of TUMP's purpose is to make sure that doesn't happen or try to make it not happen. So when you bring it back, I'd like to have a discussion on some of the traffic issues we're facing right now. That's all I have, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else in queue on the phones?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Ms. Hewitt.
I just have one more question for Chris. When was the last time you've done a fee comparison?
Our last one was done in 2019, and we will be doing one in conjunction with the Nexus study.
Thank you.
So Chris, just to reconfirm this, this is just an update, we're just voting to accept the update that we're going to
That is correct.
deferring it to the September whenever you bring it back to us.
Yes. So we prepare as a regular basis a summary of all committee activities. There was discussion at one of our committees about doing a future Nexus study update. By taking action on the activities update, you're merely accepting that the accuracy of the report. We will be bringing a staff back an item to you in September to discuss doing a Nexus study before we initiate the Nexus study.
Okay. Thank you. And hopefully things will kind of settle down in the market anyway, 'cause it'd be interesting to see a study done at this time with everything going bonkers. So, do we have a motion for this item? Okay, Mr. Tisdale?
Moved, I'll second.
That's Corona seconding?
Yes,
Commissioner a second.
that's fine.
Okay.
Roll call vote.
Roll call, please.
City of Banning.
Yes, I'm sorry. I didn't hear the motion.
It's simply a receive and file, sir. But because it was pulled from the consent calendar, we still need to do a vote.
Okay, thank you. I will vote yes. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. City of Beaumont. Calamasa.
Yes.
Canyon Lake.
Yes.
Corona.
Yes.
Eastvale.
Yes.
Hemet.
Yes.
Rupa Valley.
Yes.
McElsinore. Menifee.
Yes.
Moreno Valley.
Yes.
Murrieta.
Yes.
Norco.
Yes.
Harris.
Yes.
Riverside.
Yes.
San Jacinto.
Yes.
Temecula.
Aye.
Wildemar.
Aye.
County District 1. District 2.
Was that a
I'm
district one?
sorry, was that District 1? Supervisor Jeffries? District 2?
Yes.
District 3? District 5?
Yes.
Eastern Municipal Water District?
Yes.
Western Municipal Water District?
Yes.
That concludes the roll call vote for that item, and it passes unanimously.
Okay, now we are on reports and discussion. And the first one is from Cal Cities. Is Aaron on the phone?
Yeah, I'm here.
Well, good
Madam Chair, committee
afternoon.
members, thank you. Good to see all of you, sort of. It's hard this way, but it's nice to be here. Thank you for having me. I just wanted to provide an update on the budget. As I'm sure you're all aware, the governor and legislature did pass the state budget, but there are still several details to be worked out. Typically what they do is they pass the budget mostly in concept, and then they roll out the trailer bills, and the trailer bills are where all the details are. And as time moves forward, they work them out because there's still a lot of negotiation. So we have been advocating for funding for homelessness and housing, broadband, some SB 1383 implementation, and we were advocating for funding for cities that still had a deficit even after they received the federal ARPA funds. That piece was left out of the budget. There is funding for broadband infrastructure, and there is funding for homelessness and housing. It looks like we will be getting $1 billion annually over 7 years for broadband, which is significant. We will also be getting funding for directly to cities and local governments for homelessness. We are still trying to see exactly how this will be allocated. The governor is funding Project Home Key significantly. We're hoping to get some of the HAP funds funded with some of this money because that's a little bit more immediate solution, not long-term. So more details to come on that. We are also hoping for the SB 1383 implementation that will be part of the cap and trade negotiations. The bill that is helping with the delay and at least the penalties is still moving forward, and that could potentially be amended to include some funding if it's not included in the budget. I know you just had a discussion about all of your housing requirements. There's still a lot of bills that are pretty detrimental to all of you in the housing realm that we have concerns with. There's one that we've been talking a lot about, AB 215, with your pro-housing designations. This would require that cities have a mid-cycle housing element consultation with the Department of Housing and Community Development if your housing production is low. This bill was recently amended, but it actually makes it worse in our opinion. So I know I've sent out an action alert. I do recommend that all of you send in your opposition letters. This one is moving forward. SB 9, I know we've talked a lot about that one, is continuing to move forward pretty quickly. There is another one, SB 555 by McGuire. This has to do with your transient occupancy taxes. Basically what they're trying to do is they're trying to create an authority to collect your TOT taxes on short-term rentals with CDTFA, but we're concerned with it because it could result in less effective and transparent TOT collection, and it could result in the termination of your current existing contracts that you have with your collection agreements. So if those of you already have agreements to collect your TOT, you really need to be looking at this. It's SB 555. Right now we have an opposed unless amended position because of those concerns. I see some of you making faces too, so definitely look at that bill. A bill that we are not opposed to, so I do have something positive, is SB 15 by Portantino. Basically, this allows some incentives for rezoning idle retail sites. It just gives you some tools to help you if you have some of these big box retailers or commercial shopping centers just sitting vacant. We're hoping to get some grants to help redevelop these sites. So if that's something that would affect your jurisdiction, I would definitely recommend you support it. There is another bill that I think is, given the current heat wave we've been experiencing, it's SB 341. This would require the CPUC to establish a backup power requirement for certain wireline telecommunication providers to ensure that services can be maintained for at least 72 hours during an electrical outage. So this is something we're supporting just to make sure that we have the power to make sure that our communities are safe. So that's another good one. The broadband bills that would provide funding to help with the broadband infrastructure are also moving forward, which is good news. But there are other housing bills. I just don't want to take up hours of your time. We do have our division meeting tonight. The City of Desert Hot Springs is hosting it virtually. I encourage all of you to join if you can. It starts at 5 p.m. But thank you for having me today. I'm happy to answer any questions. And just keep watching your email from me for all the action alerts that I'm sending out.
Thank you, Erin. Janice, do any of the members of the public have any questions or comments?
I see no hands raised.
Anybody in the room? Seeing none, do any of the committee members have any questions or comments? Okay, again, thank you, Erin. This is to receive and file. Okay, next one's a little more information. It's item B is the TUMF appeal.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. Chris Gray, Deputy Executive Director, WRCOG. Today is going to be the Chris Gray show, so I've now got, because you called me up before, I've got actually 3 items and maybe another one. But today we're here to talk about a TUMF appeal. And I want to give everyone a little bit of background. So over the roughly 18-year history of the TUMF program, we've had a number of instances where persons have had questions about TUMF assessments, TUMF regulations, a variety of things. And so what's happened over time is we have built a process to resolve these issues in an orderly and consistent fashion. And one thing I want to emphasize is it's absolutely critical that everyone be treated the same under the TUMF program. Whether you're a large merchant builder, you're building a 2 million square foot warehouse or a single family home, we want everyone to be treated the same. So because of that, we have codified, we have an administrative plan, we have a fee calculation handbook, we have an online TUMF calculator, and even an online portal. On an average year, we collect about 1,000 different transactions, and many of them are routine. A handful of time we have to get involved. When disputes do arise, we try to resolve them at the staff level, usually a meeting involving WRCOG staff, perhaps one of our consultants, sometimes legal counsel gets involved, the developer in the city almost always deals with that. Today, we're bringing forward one of our first TUMF appeals in 5 years. So in my time, 5 years at WRCOG, we have had, I believe, 2 appeals, and so this will be our second one. And so the issue in question is whether a vesting tentative map provides an exemption from paying TUMF. The way our plan is written is that if you have a vesting map or a development agreement that was approved while TUMF was being brought forward, if it had a TUMF exemption, that exemption is still valid provided certain conditions are met. The most important one today is whether that agreement has expired or not. Here's a little bit of background. When the program was brought forward, I wasn't at WRCOG at the time, but those of us who were or other people involved in the program mentioned that it was a very contentious issue. We had projects that were moving through the entitlement process, and they claimed it would be unfair to them to then require them to pay TUMF after they had been approved. So essentially a compromise was struck. The compromise was those projects in process, such as this one today, were allowed to have a TUMF exemption. However, once that, first there were two aspects of that. One, it had to be codified in an agreement or some type of conditions of approval. And once that initial agreement expired, that TUMF exemption expired. So we have given out since 2003, no additional TUMF exemptions for development agreements. At the time TUMF was enacted, there were roughly 100 of these agreements in place. Now there are only 3. There's one in the city of Corona, the business park being built near Cajalco, one in the city of Murrieta, the Triangle, and then the Harveston DA in the city of Temecula. The reason why we know this is we regularly audit our development agreements. So back in 2017, we started another audit. It was completed in 2018. Every WRCOG member agency's city manager got a letter saying these are your development agreements that are exempt. These are the ones that are not exempt. One of those was sent to the city of Hemet. The city manager at the time, Alan Parker, received it. And then what we had noticed is, and then in fall of 2020, we were contacted by the developer who said, we believe we have a TUMF exemption. We researched it again. And so D.R. Horton, who's the developer, representative theirs, is to hear the TUMF appeal. They believe that their project is exempt from TUMF. It is staff and legal counsel's opinion that the project is not exempt from TUMF. It is our contention that there is language in state law that says vesting maps have a limited duration. This project was first proposed in 2003, and we'd argue that 18 years later that TUMF exemption is no longer valid. This issue has been brought to the Admin and Finance Committee. They heard the appeal, they heard from the applicant. The appeal was denied, and now the appeal is here with you. And Madam Chair, with that, I will turn it over to our friends at D.R. Horton, who will be making a presentation to you.
Hello, good afternoon. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. My name is Colin Pierce. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Dwayne Morris, and I'm outside legal counsel for D.R. Horton Los Angeles Holding Company, Inc., and I am representing D.R. Horton and have represented them throughout this appeal process. And with me today by Zoom also is Mariana Adriatico, one of the attorneys for D.R. Horton, one of the employees for D.R. Horton. I'll be brief. I know there's a busy agenda, and obviously, as you heard, this matter has already been brought before the Finance Committee as well. And I do thank you for giving Horton the chance to present its appeal to the full Executive Committee board. Again, I'll be brief. I just want to point out that everything that was presented to you just now is, in our opinion, is incorrect legally. And that's for the basic reason that there is another statute, Government Code Section 66498.1, which provides that if a final map is approved and recorded, then the terms and conditions, including an exemption for development fees, becomes fixed, final, no different than any other recorded document. I mean, in our opinion, this is a very simple issue. Horton, the property that Horton has developed and is in the process of developing was originally exempt from the TOMF fees. And in fact, prior development in 2006-2007 timeframe took place without payment of the fees. The maps were not only approved by the City of Hamlet, but they were recorded. And the Government Code section, which I just read to you, provides that upon the recording of a final map, the terms and conditions on the final map become binding. So the expiration of an agreement has no bearing on that, has no relevance to that, and the law doesn't provide any exception for the permanency and the finality of the vesting tentative tract map. And that's exactly what's happened in this case. It's no different. Our situation is no different than if anyone listening, anyone to the meeting today, owned property and recorded a deed for the property with certain conditions, let's say an easement. So if you record a piece of property, or if you record a deed for your piece of property that has an easement over it from a government entity, the government entity doesn't have the right to come in and change the terms and conditions of the easement. They can't come in and make the easement bigger. The recording locks in the land use conditions on the property, and that's exactly what happened here. So Horton is in a unique situation. It's not, we're not coming before you to say that we have an agreement that hasn't expired or has expired. We're saying that the recording of the final vested tentative tract map locks in the terms and conditions. And Horton and, in fact, the City of Hemet have operated with the assumption and understanding that those fees shouldn't be paid and have to be paid for the property because of the exemption and then because of the recording. So again, that's sort of the summary of our position. Our overall position is that Horton is in a unique position because of the recording of the final tentative tract map, which locks in the fees under California law. And I'll be happy to answer any questions or to respond to any further statement or questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Devon.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'd like to respond to the points that have been made by Mr. Pierce. I think we see this just fundamentally differently from each other. Looking at section 6649.8.5, which was a section that was, 6649.8.1, which is a section that was quoted by the applicant's attorney, it says, and I'm quoting, "If the final map is approved," which in this case it was, "the rights conferred by this section shall be subject to the time periods set forth in subdivisions B, C, and D of section 66498.5. And then referring to Government Code section 66498.5B, "The rights conferred by a vesting tentative map as provided by this chapter shall last for an initial period of time as provided by ordinance, but shall not be less than 1 year or more than 2 years beyond the recording of the final map." And then finally, the Hemet Municipal Code provides that if a final map is approved prior to the expiration of the vesting tentative map, the tentative map vesting rights for the final map shall last for the time period set forth below, and it says for an initial period of 1 year following recordation of the map. And then there are exceptions if there are multiple recording of maps. But as we read the section from the state law and then as codified in the city's code, the tentative map, a vesting map, once finalized, provides vested rights for a period of up to 2 years, and in Hemet, 1 year following the date upon finalization. I do want to just take a moment to read, this is a legal commentary that was provided by the law firm Allen Matkins. Some of you may be aware of them. They're a large California law firm that among other things, handles land use issues, mostly for developers. And it says under the section, "The life of vested maps once the vested map is recorded. The life of the vested rights provided," sorry, reading is the hardest thing apparently. "The life of the vested rights for the property included in the final map itself is very short, a minimum of 1 year and a maximum of 2 years, decided by final ordinance, with a single 1-year extension available. Within that time frame, unless extended as described below, the subdivider must secure all permits the development within the final area will need, or the vested rights will lapse, and that development will be subject to the new laws then in place." So in this case, the final map was recorded, I believe, in 2005. The vested map's recorded thereafter. The vested map was recorded, and then any vested rights expired in 1 or 2 years thereafter. So in our mind, it expired long ago. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Thank you, Steve. Does anybody have any questions? I know we do the members of the public, but I'm going to, yes, Mr. Dinko.
The question I have is the last section that you described. Could you state again for me where that was derived? Was that a case decision or a code that was cited? We referenced a 1-year extension of the vesting, or the map, excuse me.
It said, this was from, I think you were talking about the article from Allen Matkins.
Yes, that's right. It was the article from Allen Matkins, exactly.
And it says, "The life of the vested rights for the property included in the final map itself is very short, a minimum of 1 year and a maximum of 2 years, decided by ordinance, with a single 1-year extension available."
That's what I wanted
That's from
clarification
an article, yes.
Exactly where that came from. Thank you.
Yes.
Anyone, is anybody on the line?
We have City of Hemet with their hand raised.
Okay, Russ, you want to talk?
Yes, I do. I guess, Madam Chair, the question would be for WRCOG Legal Counsel, since I'm representing City of Hemet. is it appropriate that I recuse myself from voting on this item?
No, it is not. It is appropriate, I suppose, but it's not necessary to recuse yourself from this item.
Thank you.
Sure.
City of Hammett has their hand raised. Oh, I'm sorry, Menifee.
Thank you, Janice. Hey, Stephen, Matt Leespire here. Just quick question. When there's agreements like this, just generally where you're extending TUMP obligations or you're doing this sort of thing, is there a separate agreement that needs to be drafted with the property owner and WRCOG, or can this happen directly with the city and it's the pass-through?
Okay, it's a good question. So there are two ways to essentially vest rights. One is through the vesting map, which is what we're dealing with today, and there's also then through development agreements. And the development agreement is an agreement between the developer and the city. However, I want to point out that any development agreement that's entered into now should not or cannot exempt TUMF, and if it does, then it becomes an issue for the city that executes the agreement to make up those lost payments. Does that answer your question?
Yes, exactly.
The city would be on the hook.
Thank you.
City of Norco?
Mr. Bash?
He's just harassing you.
So, in essence, the time frame is gone. So, if the vesting map, though, if I understand it correctly, per D.R. Horton's attorney, they want to keep the vesting, but all the development agreements are no longer valid. Is that what I'm hearing?
I guess I'll
I'm
let the developer's attorney respond. I'm sorry.
Yeah, again, this is Colin Pierce. We're not saying that we're basically saying the development agreement isn't relevant. We're looking at the law. The law says that upon the recordation of the final vesting map and following the city's approval, that all the terms and conditions get locked in. It's not dependent on a development agreement. The law says that this is that once the map is approved, terms and conditions are locked in, and actually make sure the right code section I'm citing here. It's Government Code Section 66498.9, I believe, also talks about developers and the public being entitled to rely on the terms and conditions of recorded documents and final maps. And
So can I just ask you a question then? So one of the terms and conditions is the window is 1 to 2 years. Is that not one of the conditions you have to adhere to?
Yeah, no, we disagree with that interpretation of the law. Your council is citing another statute which talks about maps before they're recorded. And so if the agreement or the terms and conditions of the map aren't recorded, then after 2 years it expires. That makes logical sense. If you don't record it, if you don't do the development, or you don't take the final steps and get final approval, then the terms and conditions expires. But that's not what happened in our situation. In our situation, we did get approval and we did record the final vested map, so a different statute kicks in, the one I cited to you before, which states that the terms and conditions become fixed permanently because it's a recorded document. So we're talking about a different statute which applies to recorded documents, and the only real response is a legal opinion which isn't binding, written by another law firm. The law itself, though, says that those terms and conditions become binding.
Madam Chair, if I could just respond to that.
Yes, Steve.
Yes. The section that I read, 66498.5 of the Government Code, so this is right out of the Government Code, says, and this is subdivision B, the rights conferred by a vesting tentative map as provided by this chapter shall last for an initial period of time as provided by ordinance, but shall not be less than 1 year or more than 2 years beyond the recording of the final map. So I guess we have a difference of opinion as to what that section means, but we believe that it applies to the recording of the map as well.
Well, thanks, Steve. Yeah, I actually walked through that with our city attorney, and I guess what I wish, and this is more of a comment than a question, it's a whole different world from when this map was vested. And I just would prefer that D.R. Horton would understand that there are now traffic concerns. There's things that those TUMP fees are needed for. And really the days when you could just build all these developments and not worry about water, you not worry about roads, not worry about all these things, those days are gone. And then there's huge pressures on the cities, and not just the cities, but I mean, I'm affected by building in Eastvale, Eureka Valley, Corona, and the TUMP fees is one of the ways that we're able to mitigate what other cities are also doing. And I would just wish that maybe D.R. Horton would take a different position on this and actually understand that TUMP fees are a critical component in this new world we're now experiencing. And that's all I have to say. Thank you, Madam Chair, for this time.
Thank you, Mr. Bash. Okay. Is there anybody else with a question or a comment?
No one on Zoom?
Thank you, Mr. Devon. Still have a hard time 16 years later after it's recorded. Most things, never mind.
Can I make a motion?
Please do.
I make a motion to go along with staff's recommendation on this issue.
Krupa Valley will second.
Kennedy, second.
We have Rupa Valley a second. City of Banning?
Aye.
Beaumont? Calamasa?
Aye.
Canyon Lake?
Yes.
Corona?
Aye. Aye.
Thank you. Eastvale?
Aye.
Hemet?
Aye.
Rupa Valley?
Yes.
Lake Elsinore?
Yes.
Menifee?
Yes.
Moreno Valley?
Yes.
Murrieta?
Yes.
Norco?
Yes.
Harris?
Yes.
Riverside?
Yes.
San Jacinto?
Aye.
Temecula?
Aye.
Wildemar?
Aye.
County District 1? District 2?
Yes.
District 3? District 5?
Yes.
And as a reminder, the water districts do not vote on TUMF items. That passes unanimously.
Okay. Thank you. We are now on
Thank you,
item
everybody.
6C. Mr. Gray, you're back.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. This is my only going to come up 2 more times after this. So
Thanks for the warning.
thanks to Councilmember Hewitt. We got a preview of this item, but we're here today to talk about our TUMP CCI. Just to give everyone, for those of you who maybe are TUMP newbies or who don't live, eat, and breathe TUMP like I do, a little bit of a refresher on the program. Program started in 2003. It's really intended to mitigate regional traffic impacts. It's a fee assessed on new development, not existing buildings, so it's only on new development. It's intended to build facilities to offset the traffic associated with new development, and you can only use TUMP to build new infrastructure, not maintain infrastructure, and it's part of what I call the ecology of funding, the ecosystem of funding. So cities use TUMP with grants, sales tax, state and federal funding, gas taxes, other sources. TUMP is funded over 110 completed projects, and funds that are collected by TUMP go to WRCOG and then come back to you to actually build things. So the CCI is a construction cost index. Think about it as a cost of living adjustment, but for infrastructure projects. Unfortunately or fortunately, we are required by our admin plan to bring this back to you on an annual basis. I can tell you that I have been told that there are 1 or 2 times the CCI has been approved. One of them was in 2019, and one time the fees actually went down. That was approved overwhelmingly. However, it has not been overly popular with our board. And I will say we did not take any action on the CCI last year because of all the uncertainties surrounding COVID. This was brought to the PwC in April of May, brought to the TAC in May, and then was brought to Admin and Finance in June. So why do a CCI? Because things cost more. Over the past several years, we've seen significant increases in costs of labor, costs of materials. One thing that's happening is with all of the development that's occurring. Development uses the same thing. Development uses steel, development uses concrete, development uses welders, and costs have increased significantly. Doing a CCI means you don't have to have larger fee increases when you do a nexus study. Essentially, in the words of one of our city managers, it's kicking the can down the road. And to go back to you is we'll come back to you in September to get your permission to start a nexus study. If we do get permission to start a nexus study, it's probably about an 12 to 18 month process at a minimum. And then after that, any fee increase or changes in fees would recommend be phased in. So we're looking at no changes in the fees probably till 2023. So there's a prescribed process to do a CCI adjustment. We're required to look at two factors. One is the engineering news record, CCI, which accounts for labor and materials. This is a national index. Since the last one was adopted, that number's gone up 3.7%. The other issue is land costs as evaluated by the National Association of Realtors. Those have actually gone up 17.4% since the last CCI adoption. If you take a weighted average of the two, it's about a 9 to 10% increase. Here's a graph. The red line is the real estate prices. You can tell because it peaked in 2008. But it's important to remember things like concrete, steel, all of those things have been gradually increasing in prices. And those are all things that you need to buy to build a project. So the current TUMP schedule is shown on the far left. We brought forward an initial recommendation, which was a 9% increase. That was brought to the PWC. That was adopted. When it was brought to the city managers, they recommended a 3% increase, and that 3% increase was adopted by the Admin and Finance Committee in June. One thing I want to talk about is we've made some adjustments in the TUMP fee and how TUMP is applied to retail projects. And so one thing we did was we've exempted small retail uses. So anything 3,000 square feet and smaller, these are restaurants, small stores, they pay no TUMP. Secondly, the retail fee has been frozen at $7.50 since the last Nexus study, which was adopted in 2017. The study was done in 2016. There has been a cost to the program. However, this was done primarily at the direction of the city managers and also the executive committee as a way to incentivize retail projects, recognizing they pay sales tax and contribute to our agencies in other ways. So just so everyone knows, currently it's a gangbuster year for residential, both single family and multifamily. Almost 90% of our collections so far this year have been residential. And just to share with you how, what's the benefit of the CCI? Well, it means you have, well, yes, fees are going up, but it means more money comes back to you. And one of the questions is, will a CCI negatively affect development? So as Councilmember Hewitt asked, when's the last time we did a fee comparison study? It was actually 2019. So using data from that, we'll just share with you some round numbers. You have let's take a $400,000 house. This is new houses only. So remember, existing home sales, not affected by TUMP at all. So take a new $400,000 house, add $300 to the price of that. We have shared the CCI increase with the BIA. We shared it with NAOP and other stakeholders in the region. And so to put some numbers is, let's just take the single family. So the amount of fees a single family house will pay will go up by 0.6%. In terms of total project costs, it's 0.05%, not 5%, not 0.5%, it's 0.05%. I will also tell you that we are having a gangbuster TUMP year. In fact, out of the past 10 years, this year so far is our second best year we have had in the past 10 years. So even with COVID and everything else going on, we are developing like crazy. And it's not just one or two cities. Beaumont's collections are up. Menifee's collections are up. Our friends in the Southwest, their collections are up too. So we are seeing more development activity in this year, except for one other year in the past 10 years. So clearly, COVID is not negatively affecting development. So here's the next steps. If you approve the CCI today, we would recommend it be implemented no sooner than January 1, 2002. That gives people an opportunity to assess and respond and adjust. We will be providing the template ordinances and staff reports so our member agencies can adopt it. Everyone who's currently in the pipeline would be able to pay the current fee up until that July 1 period. And so just to show you what the fee increases would be, it would go up for the single family is at $98.10. It would go up to $10,104, and a 3% increase across the board. So what happens if you don't approve the CCI? Well, it just means less money for you. This is not money that WRCOG keeps. It's money WRCOG gets and gives back to you. We don't see the CCI, where the CCI goes in, it's going to meaningfully affect development at all, which means the same traffic will be there. You'll have the same impacts. You'll just have slightly less money. That means less money to you. You're going to have to find other ways of paying for that same infrastructure, or you're going to have to defer projects. One way or another, either something's going to get delayed, or you're going to have to find another way to pay for it. And so, Madam Chair, staff's recommendation is to approve the 3% CCI, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, I will entertain any questions, and I have Mr. Hewitt.
Chris, just to make the record straight, we're not going to go retroactive to 2002, are we? Because you said...
I'm sorry, 2022.
That's what I was hoping.
Yes.
So, I mean, you know, you
Yes.
slipped that one in there, and boy, that could mean a lot of money.
Sorry, January 1st, we would not recommend doing a fee increase before January 1, 2022.
2022, that's fine. No, look, I'm going to be voting no against this for the same reason. Death by 1,000 cuts. I mean, again, we've got a real issue here. Look, you can sell anything by, look at eventually, though, there is a straw that breaks the camel's back. And this is, we talked about this earlier. We've got this, and then we've got a nexus coming up that very seldom does a nexus actually go downhill and say, oh, you know, we can do this. But the problem is, too, you said how popular it was when one of those CCIs actually went down. That'd be around 2006, 2007, 2008 or 9.
Yeah,
or 10,
I think it was during the recession.
Yeah, and so, you know, I say we get a jump on it because I'm predicting some really, really bad times ahead. So I will be voting no on this, and that's my reasons.
Mr. Dinko?
Real quick, how often do we come back and look at the CCIs typically? Do we have a staff recommendation? Is it every 3 years, 4 years? I'm curious on that.
Our plan requires it to do on an annual basis, which means I will be here next year doing this as well. I will, in all seriousness, I will add this point. We tend not to do a CCIs when we're doing a nexus study. So if we are doing a nexus study in the middle of next year, we won't bring forward a CCI. But if the idea is that you do a CCI in the years you're not doing a nexus study.
And one other follow-up question on that. When we do a step, let's say there was to be a vote and there was an approval of a certain amount. In this case, for the sake of argument, it's a 3%. Do we ever do a multi-year, like based on GNP, or is it set, or is the one amount set, or is it like graduated over a certain number of years, or how is it typically done?
The last CCI was structured in a way, so 2019 CCI was approved. It was structured in a way that the multifamily, retail, service, and industrial was implemented first, and they were given, the single-family residential was given a 1-year delay.
Is there ever a separation between the two, the amount that we increase between residential and commercial?
Absolutely. You have the discretion to implement the CCI up to 9%. You could, for example, say we're going to do single-family, multifamily, industrial, not service or retail. That is entirely to your discretion. You have the discretion to phase it in. You have the discretion to do one or more land uses. You have the discretion to do no CCI at all. And in the time that I've been at WRCOG, I've seen it done a number of ways.
Thank you. That was all the questions I have. Thank you.
Is there anybody on the phone that has a question?
City of Temecula? City of Temecula?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a barking dog behind me, so I apologize. But let me go on to the next person and let me take care of the pet. Okay, thanks.
City of Calamasa?
Okay, I don't know if you guys have kids. We have a few kids. This affects a single-family home, and the point here is I have a daughter that lives at home with us. She's married, has her grandchildren there, my grandchildren there, which is great. He has a very, very good job. He works for Alaska Airlines. She stays at home part-time. She works part-time. And they can hardly afford to get a home in California. And I'm here because I'm fighting for them. And everybody like them. And so I will be voting no on this.
District 5?
I think he already spoke. I didn't clear the queue.
Okay, I'll clear the queue. We have City of Banning.
Thank you, Madam Chair. David Happy, City of Banning. I'm just curious about, maybe this isn't quite the right question that we're dealing with, but what I'm wondering is why this is a flat rate across all residential, regardless of whether a community is advantaged or disadvantaged. Everybody pays the same rate, and we're going to instill a 3% rate that's going to affect residents, in the past area, county-wide, as I understand it, regardless of the community. And I'm just wondering about that aspect of it.
So the answer to that is one of the foundational decisions that was made when the TUM program was set up was that the fee would be consistent across the region. The idea is that costs tend to be similar, whether it's Corona or Banning. It's not an LA to Orange County to Riverside conversation. And I believe at the time the thought was they didn't want it to start a race to the bottom. So there are so for example, the San Bernardino County has a program that wishes it was TUMF but is not, where each city sets its own rates, and that becomes a race to the bottom. So essentially, if I were to let the city of Banning set its own rate, or there's a special rate for the pass, then there would be an incentive for that rate to be as low as possible with the idea it would attract development. So it was done in a way so it would reduce the incentive for cities to compete for development. That still happens, but it's not on the basis of a TUMF fee.
City of San Jacinto?
Thank you. Chris, who pays this fee? Is it the homeowner like me who can barely, make ends meet, or is it the developer, the builder?
So in reality, the fee is first paid by the developer, and then they pass it on as much as they can.
To who?
To the homeowner or the home purchaser. What I will say, though, is in the end, the infrastructure needs to be paid for one way or another. And I will share with you, for those of you who don't know, I live in Kevin Jeffries district. I live in the county of Riverside. I have 17 different line items on my property tax. I have 3 CFDs, 4 CSAs, multiple bond measures. And so what happens is if the infrastructure is not paid for through TUMF, it's paid for another way, or it's paid through a CFD, or it's paid through some other financing mechanism. So I would argue that, so let me be clear. You would pay this if you were buying a new home. If you're buying an existing home, you do not pay this fee.
So I go in and a home builder builds a home in my area, which we all know we're in Riverside County. God knows we have land. Thank you, Jesus, because everybody from LA is moving out here, and that's why we have this massive expansion. So I go and I buy my neighbor's home that's already built. I don't pay this fee.
No.
I don't pay this fee on an annual basis.
You do not.
So this isn't, I'm not going to see a reoccurring thing on my bill that says I'm going to have to pay this, correct?
No, it'll be paid once, and you won't actually, the only people who know they pay TUMF payments are people building new single-family homes. So occasionally I'll get a call from a a contractor or a person who's building a single-family home. And they are the ones, everyone pays. But if you're a D.R. Horton or a KB Homes, you're just writing a check.
So,
And it's part of your overall cost of development. You know what the fees are. It's in your pro forma, and they plan for it ahead of time.
so they plan for it ahead of time.
Yep.
We purchase a home. Let's say I'm a young married couple. We just got married, and we're buying our first home. We go in. Are we going to expect to pay fees?
You'll pay, so if you're buying a brand new home, you will get a mortgage, and that mortgage will be all the costs. So it's the builder's costs for lumber, labor, land, entitlement, their profit, and then all the fees associated with that home. But it's paid once, when that home is purchased the first time.
So if I'm walking in to buy a 400, 450,000, 500,000, some of your cities are like 800,000. But if I'm going to buy a house that's 400,000, 500,000, and I want that house, and I'm looking at that house going, man, finally we got our house, right? $300 is not going to stop me if they passed it on to me.
From the times I've purchased homes, I would argue I've paid more in, title search fees or all those stupid fees you pay on a mortgage. But I do want to, in all seriousness, respond to Councilmember Hewitt's point. As our county, we have a housing affordability issue. If it wasn't for the fact that this money is going to pay for needed infrastructure, I would not be bringing the CCI forward. We have to find a way to bring down the cost of the homes, and there are other strategies available to us, and part of it is getting some of those state mandates rolled back. And at our Admin and Finance Committee on Wednesday, we're going to talk to you about a bill, SB 12, which Aaron didn't talk about, that opposes additional mandates related to wildfires. So here's an example. The state has mandated that all new homes have to have solar panels. Solar panels cost $10,000, $15,000, $20,000. So at one point, the state is saying, build more houses, housing needs to be more affordable, put solar panels on them. So Councilmember Hewitt is 100% right. We have an affordability issue. We have many people in this region who can't afford homes. I have a 13-year-old daughter, and I hope she can buy a home here, and right now I don't think she can. But we also need to understand, Mayor Pro Tem Bash said this very well, the TUMP fees are not money that just comes to WRCOG. It goes to build roads and bridges, interchanges, bus facilities that people need. And if you don't collect it through TUMP, you're going to have to pay for it another way.
And that's my next point, because most of you know, your cities aren't usually, we're in Riverside County, your cities aren't very big. We don't have the expansive bank accounts that LA has, where they have money that they, house and all of that. And since they're getting rid of their people and bringing them out here, they are going to have more money. Just ship them out here and we'll take care of it. So we don't have those monies for those infrastructure projects. And I don't know how many of you have looked at your local projects, your CIP projects, and looked at and to see which ones are TUMP projects, which ones we're partnering with TUMP on, which roads and projects that we could never afford to get done. Never, if this this plan hadn't been created. It's like taking and preparing for your retirement, basically. You're paying ahead. You're putting money in ahead to get something done that if you didn't, you wouldn't be able to afford. So we really need to look at this realistically. I hate raising fees. I hate it. But I also know it's an evil necessary. It's necessary for us to do what we have to do in order for us to get projects done, in order for us to actually provide a quality of life that our people expect when they pay $400,000 for a home. It's not just about, $300. It's not just about looking at homes that, hey, if they're way out of your price range, just don't go there. That's my advice, don't go there. Somehow we do have to bring the price down, but this is not going to be doing it by not providing the infrastructure that we need to make sure that our communities are taken care of. So I will not be voting not for it. I will be voting for it. Thank you.
Is there anybody on the line?
Not online and Zoom, no ma'am.
Okay, I'm going to speak.
Temecula I have my hand up, Temecula.
Who is that?
Marianne Edwards.
It's Mary Ann Temecula.
Okay, go on.
Okay, thank you. Once again, we're looking at minimal cost per single-family residence for the homeowners or for the single buyer. And the question was, how did we determine what the fees were in the beginning and why was the single-family homeowner treated the same as the developer? TUMP came about because the County of Riverside had not made any improvements to Winchester Road, yet had approved thousands and thousands of building permits in French Valley and East. And so the city of Temecula sued the county 4 times because they weren't requiring any infrastructure to be built, especially Winchester Road. Scott Road wasn't finished. Newport wasn't finished. So everybody north on Winchester Road was coming down through Temecula and getting on the freeway at Winchester. So the result of that was we won 4 lawsuits with the county, and the result was that we would look at establishing a fee structure, and this was the fee structure. It was TUMP. And we literally took the amount of growth that would be expected over X number of years, and it was a long-range study, and divided that by the number of homes that had been approved, knowing after doing traffic surveys what areas automobiles and trucks would be using the freeway, and we've established how much freeway lanes, additional freeway lane space we would need. And that's how TUMP was established based on cost. And so that's why homes are assessed the same way, because each home produces that much use, takes that much use of the freeway. So in the long run, if we don't do it, we're going to be back to the gridlock that we've seen. And a good example of that is French Valley Parkway. When French Valley Parkway is completed, and we're working on the most important phase right now, which is phase 2, which puts 4 brand new auxiliary lanes on the freeway to eliminate that crossover traffic at Winchester. And the studies that we did with our I-15 study with County of San Diego, Caltrans, many other agencies said that by eliminating that crossover, people trying to get to the right to take I-215 and trying to get to the left to stay north on the 15, once that is eliminated, then the freeway will open up because capacity is there. I guarantee you that there are Lake Elsinore, Wildomar, Temecula, Murrieta, Menifee, Hemet. There are other cities, residents who use that every day if they commute to San Diego. So TUMP is done for a regional benefit, and we could never afford to do a $300 million freeway project without it. So that's just one example. And remember, it's all regional projects, so it's going to benefit your residents one way or another. So I'll be voting in support, and then let's see what the Nexus study does. Thank you.
I have a couple quick questions.
Yes.
You made a statement, but I didn't hear a follow-up to it. You said you shared with BIA and NAOP. What kind of response did we get from them?
We have not gotten any response. I will note we've not received any comment letters. I don't believe that they're here to speak in opposition to this. So it was shared, and we're not aware of it.
How did we share it?
Well, I, for example, spoke to Lou Monville, who's currently head of the BIA. I spoke to a consultant who works for NAOP. We have sent them notices.
Okay, they did receive something in writing?
Yes.
Okay, so I want to make sure, because I don't want us to come back here and then have them in our faces that they didn't know about it. So yes. I'm just, because if they're the ones that have to sell the homes with that added 3% on it. So that was my bigger concern. I'm the one that says government don't raise, and I get it, but this is a nexus straight to, if you sit in an RCTC meeting, you're getting in your ear about the congestion and the traffic, and this is one little way, and as Mary Ann was explaining, of setting money so that we can do on the whole county, on regional arterials and everything. So if we continue to build houses and not allow for infrastructure, it is only going to get worse. And if you're not happy now and everybody goes, I think they still say that people aren't at work yet, but I don't know, the traffics are pretty backed up. And that's everywhere. I mean, of course, in your neighborhood, it's always the worst. I hear that from everybody. Right, Jackie? Yeah. But you're going to get that down the
I
fringe.
would add, Madam Chairman, I would add that everybody says it's Temecula traffic.
I know.
I
was going to say the French Valley Parkway.
Yes, thank you.
Everybody has the worst traffic, and that's why this is a countywide program. And you know, there just is never going to be enough. We can't have enough cement to build us out of this mess. And this is just a partial way of doing it. I certainly do not, but this is going from one pocket to another. And when we're responsible for infrastructure, it's not that it's going in the general fund, it's not going for salaries. That's where we need to be upset about. But at 3%, you know, it's really that tricky thing. And my bigger thing is if NAIOP and BIA, who are the responsible parties on selling the properties for the one-time fee of being built, they would be here if they didn't think they could sell. And they would be here in our ear, which is why we've had times that we haven't raised that, because they have come and says, we can't recoup that money. So if they're not here, I tend to have that feeling is that right now is an okay time. Mr. Brajas.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to echo Vice Chair Reese's. I think every council member, if you haven't already, look at all the projects that are in your city currently or already were because of TUMP. There's things that I know right now in Eastfield, the Limonite Bridge over, and there are very many projects in our city, and there's some that are on the docket. So thanks to Councilmember Bergson for me on RCTC that I really want built soon, like the Rubidoux Freeway interchange off-ramp. None of our cities could ever afford these on their own, and everyone knows, and I think with Kevin and myself, we're begrudgingly building more homes in very specific places, but that's where we need the infrastructure. And I would argue, Chris, you're right to a point where you say if we don't pay through TUMP, someone pays for it. I would argue that in some cases, no one pays for it, and that road just goes to heck in a handbasket, and no one can ride around it. And it looks like you're playing golf on that road in a 9-hole. So I'm definitely in favor of this. As I said before earlier, it's a 3%. That was very conservative, and it was a recommendation by our city managers on the TAC. I think once we do the nexus, we're probably going to find out that we shortchanged ourselves for a while, but I think it's important that we do that and only increase 3% as a recommendation for the cost of construction right now until we know what the true number is, and then obviously we all hope that it would go down, but right now with the cost of wood and lumber
They
and all
went
that
up
stuff.
50%, and no one's screaming about that.
Yes, and so I'm in favor, and I just wanted to echo that and share that. Sometimes roads just won't get fixed if you don't have the funds for it. And I'm curious to see your tax bill. That's a lot of different kinds of items.
Well, the point is that what we have noticed is we have an issue with how we finance infrastructure, and frankly, I think it goes back to how we're not getting enough state help. But in my community, those CFDs went for a park, drainage improvements, roads, and then they're maintained through CSAs. So yes, I'd be happy to share with you but my property tax is maxed out at the full 2%, and all of my neighbors are maxed out at the 2%. And it just shows that whether you use a fee or a sales tax or a gas tax, developers have to get something funded one way or another. And that cost ends up being passed on to the taxpayer, gets passed on to the homeowner. They're not paying for it out of their pocket or their goodness.
And not to get too much to the weeds, my last comment is even that 2%, as we all know, like in my district, I have limonite from Camino Real to Mission. And that 2% no longer covers even the water. So where do you pull the money for to maintain your infrastructure? You start pulling from your general fund. And we all know where that leads. So thanks, Chris.
Supervisor Hewitt.
Yeah, I've got so much to say. We don't represent NAIOP or BIA. They are trade groups that are made up of builders and apartment owners or whatever else. We represent the people of Riverside County. And actually, Councilmember Happy said something that really pointed out that right now, the way the TUMP's set up, it is a regressive tax. It really is. When you put $10,000 onto a house that's going to sell for $300 or $350 for brand new out in Banning, it has a heck of a lot bigger impact than one that's going to sell for $800,000 or $1 million in Corona or Temecula or somewhere. That is what's known as a regressive tax. Now, if you want to go for a race to the bottom, and the bottom means that prices are going to be lower and that infrastructure will have to be competitive and things will be done for a competitive way, I'm all for that race to the bottom. But he pointed out some other things, and this is a little bit of a bait and switch. He tried to call the boogeyman the state, and they are. They're certainly the boogeyman. The more and more mandates that get put on, the solar one was a very good example. The upcoming one that are going to make it almost impossible to build in the interface, the urban wildlife interface that we talk about, because we can't seem to handle forest management or whatever. That's a whole different subject. But at this point, we have to start taking that responsibility than ourselves. And by the way, unless you pay cash for your house, that's $300 extra. And remember, it's $10,300. Don't forget the $10,000 original of that TUMP fee. That is not paid once. It comes out of your pocket every month in your mortgage for 15 or 30 years. And you'll pay for it several times over. So again, to me, it's not even close. We need to start changing things now, and this is a start.
Ms. Casillas.
I'd like to make a motion on this item.
Commissioner, move approval.
Second.
Okay, we have Mr. Dinko back.
Do I have an opportunity to make one last comment before we?
Please.
Okay. My last comment, I'll make it brief. I think back of what our Marianne Edwards made mention earlier in the conversation about market price, and that when we see sales, it's hard for me to believe. We said, well, we're not going to recognize and move forward with a 3% increase, and suddenly our home builders are going to say, hey, wait, we're going to reduce the price of this home because we didn't have an additional TUMP fee assessed for this next year. So we're going to sell it for much higher, but hey, we're going to give you a great deal. It's hard for me to believe that it's going to lower the price of the home. I see it as an opportunity to, continue to build our infrastructure. If we support this, we need to recognize the fact that costs do go up for government as well. I'm generally very tax averse, but this isn't just a tax that's directly on the homeowners. Ultimately, the builders have to carry that. And I don't see our housing getting cheaper. It's based on the market. And so I'll just end by saying, at this time, I support moving forward with it. Thank you.
Mr. Fierro.
I'll also keep it quick because I'm new here. It sounds like maybe there is a need to constantly be justifying why TUMP is of value to certain cities, right? And I understand there's a certain level playing field. We don't want fees varying from city to city for many number of reasons, but it sounds like maybe the issue isn't the 3% cost of construction cost index increase, but whether or not TUMP is an appropriate vessel for us to invest in infrastructure. To Chris's point, I agree that we have to pay for it one way or another, but whether or not TUMP is the best vessel in which to do that, I'm not saying where I stand one way or another. I tend to think it's a pretty good program, but maybe we just need to be having a more robust conversation as these things come up about TUMP and how it values, what value it has to certain cities, to unincorporated areas and such. So, yeah, I think we're talking about more than the 3% increase right now, right? So I'm in favor of 3% increase. Construction costs has gone up way more than 3% in my opinion, but there's obviously a bigger discussion here that needs to be had, and maybe that needs to happen at a different time.
Well, if we ever do have that discussion, you need to get RCTC in, who is the recipient of the TUMP, to spend it, not just us who are making that decision, and probably other parties involved, because those that end up having to work around that. It's an all-inclusive. It's not something that was done haphazardly. Nexus studies are done somewhat regularly. At least they do occur. We haven't had increases on several years, as Chris had said. So it really is, it's a challenge, because no one likes to add a tax. As Wendy was talking about, with her kids, I got 5 adult kids. It's the same thing. We all have that. But those homes at 3% is nothing compared to what the lumber at 50% or everything else that is paid, and then the infrastructure won't be improved in any way. So this is just a way that was set aside for every house built, every industrial area, there's going to be money set aside to work on infrastructure. So if that's the focus, then we have a motion and we have a second.
I would move, if it's not formalized yet, to accept this item.
Didn't we already have it? She already made the motion.
I have Corona for motion and Temecula for second. Okay. City of Banning?
I made it.
City of Banning?
Oh, no.
Banning is no, thank you. Beaumont? Calamasa?
No.
Canyon Lake?
No.
Corona?
Yes.
Eastville?
Yes.
Hemet?
Yes.
Harupa Valley?
Yes.
Lake Elsinore?
Yes.
Menifee? Menifee? Moreno Valley?
Yes.
Murrieta?
No.
Norco?
Yes.
Paris?
Yes.
Riverside?
Yes.
San Jacinto?
Yes.
Temecula?
Yes.
Wildemar?
Yes.
District 1? District 2?
Yes.
District 3? District 5?
No.
And again, water districts do not vote on TUMF matters, and that item passes.
What was the tally on that?
We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 noes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 yeses.
Okay, we are on item D, and this is recognition of the Executive Committee outgoing chair, Rachel Singer.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. It's good to see everyone in person today. Like Madam Chair said, my name is Rachel Singer, Program Manager here at WRCOG, and today I'm just going to be taking a few moments to honor our outgoing Executive Committee Chair. I can't see the slide, so I'm assuming it's on the first one. Sorry about that. There we go. To provide some background, typically our outgoing executive committee chairs are honored at our annual General Assembly event in person. As many of you know, we had our virtual event a couple weeks ago on June 24th, and so today staff will be recognizing Mayor Kevin Bash from the City of Norco for his efforts. Despite various challenges over the past year, Mayor Bash...
Is Kevin, are you on this phone?
He was.
He's with us.
I'm here.
Okay, I want to make sure you're seeing this.
As
My
we
cowboy hat.
I'm glad to hear it. He exemplified resilience, adaptability, and positivity, and it really was a joy and pleasure to work with him, especially on our virtual General Assembly event. We couldn't have done it without him. With that, though, I'm going to invite up our Deputy Executive Director, Chris Gray, to provide a few additional remarks.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I only have one more item I'll be up here for, but I want to just speak from the heart. I had the honor and privilege of working with Kevin as our interim executive director and as the deputy as our previous executive director transitioned out, and it really was a joy and pleasure to work with Kevin. I'm not going to tell you how many times he called me, but it was always a pleasure to chat with him, help him out, and I did want to say last year was not an easy year. We had no in-person executive committee meetings. Almost all of our meetings were virtual, and Kevin did a stellar job. So in recognition of that, we bought him a super awesome hat, which I will point out to you was purchased in the city of Norco, not Corona or Harupa Valley. Turns out we bought him a really nice hat. I didn't know anything about hats. I just said, get me the most expensive one. And the only struggle we had was whether it was a black hat or white hat, but we got him white because Kevin's such a good guy. So Kevin, I wanted to just personally thank you for being our chair for last year. And I'm sorry we couldn't do this in person, but the next time we see you, we will give you a super awesome plaque. Thank you.
You know, it was a very difficult year. but I'm real proud of a lot of the things that happened. I'm really happy with the hiring of Kurt. I think that WRCOG is poised to just do nothing but go up and do some great things. So thank you. And to the staff, this hat is so cool. I actually wear it. And I've got probably 10 cowboy hats, and this is the one I've been wearing lately. So thank you.
I
do deserve a white hat.
I just want to open this up if anybody has something they want to share with Kevin, since we didn't have this opportunity. Anybody?
Well,
Kevin?
it's Marianne, and I'd like to say, Kevin, thank you for taking the responsibility. It is a big job, and especially in, the last 18 months that we've seen very difficult, and hopefully our cities came out of COVID, strong and moving forward. So thanks for your leadership and for maintaining a sense of humor.
Thank you, Marianne.
Supervisor Hewitt.
Kevin, there was a very, very famous person in history in 1913. His name was Captain Smith, and he was commanding the Titanic. Look at, you went ahead. Now hey. You went ahead and said full steam ahead, and here we are. We're still afloat. So for that, you proved that obviously he didn't have your good looks or your intelligence. And had he, there'd been a lot more people alive that day. So thank you for your hard work through a really tough time.
We did hit a few icebergs, didn't we?
Okay.
Thank you.
Ms. Vice Chair.
Kevin. I know everybody saw the video. I really love you, Kevin. I wasn't trying to run away. I really wasn't. We love you. You did a great job. It was a pleasure working with you. As always, we've been together since the very beginning on committees. So it's truly a good friendship, and we miss seeing you in person. So next time, come in person. We expect it.
Yeah, our RCA, and it's just RCA is virtual, so I couldn't get there in time.
Just come to the county next time. We'll find you a desk with a computer. And Mr. Tisdale.
Yeah, I didn't realize that until it was too late.
Thank you. I think what Supervisor Hewitt meant was damn the torpedoes full speed ahead. That's probably the better analogy for you. So, when we went into this virtual world, it was tough. But I want to say about you, you were always able to make sure that all the members got to speak their voice, say what was on their mind, and I really appreciate that. So I know it was a tough year for a lot of people, but you led us through it, and we thank you.
Anybody else before we move on?
Time to move on.
Just my last comment, and we're going to move on, is Kevin, you did, under the circumstances, an incredible job. It was the most difficult, there's no manual with what you had to do. And nor did you write a manual for me.
Actually, I did.
Where is it?
I'll send it to you.
Okay. But thank you for your leadership. Okay, we are now moving on to WRCOG staff service milestones. Princess.
Good afternoon, and I think the mic's here. Thank you so much. Thank you. I'd like to say thanks for allowing me to present. My name is Princess Hester. I'm the Director of Administration for WRCOG, and today I have the pleasure of presenting our staff milestones for 5 years. And as it's been said, it was a very difficult year, and we were able to maintain everything for WRCOG. We were able to continue to host our meetings virtually, and without staff, we wouldn't have been able to do some of the things that we've done. And so with that, I'd like to present a 5-year award first to Andrew Ruiz. Andrew is our CFO and has been definitely beneficial in helping us sustain ourselves financially. Secondly is Christopher Gray, who's our interim co-chair, captain, and our interim director. So he's been very beneficial in helping us. And then Chris Sang was actually the interim director for the transportation department, if you don't know. And so he's also been influential in the climate adaptation plan and also the active transportation plan. So with that, I'd like to call each of them up and to present their awards to them, if possible.
That means now.
Front
Chris?
and center. Andrew, thank you.
And Madam Chair, if you wouldn't mind coming around so we can take a picture of you with our staff as
Well,
we would
Kevin
normally
should be
do.
taking the pic. Oh, he's not here.
And Christine, and then also our director, Kurt, if you could come up and take a photo with staff as well. You guys head on up to the... You want to do it here? Like, we could do it right there. It's like the... Yeah, this is where we do it for the... Yeah.
They got a spot. Yeah, they do have some, so they don't get the bias.
Squeeze in tight.
Don't sit behind me. Usually, I should be behind you. It makes me look skinnier.
All right, on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. One more. 1, 2, 3, and then let's take one more for good measure. 1, 2, 3.
Okay, we're on item 7, which is the report from our Technical Advisory Committee Chair, and he's not here today, so we're going to move on to item 8. And this is a report from committee representatives. Mr. Tisdale, do you have a report from WRCOG?
I do, Madam Chair. We did have a meeting on June 18th. So just a couple things. I know we're running a little late. CalCog leads the California Academy for Regional Leaders. Registration just opened, so if anyone's interested in sending their city folks or other folks to that, please make sure you do so. They've been producing good results. Also, again, they're following up and watching all of the items that have come out of the budget, watching the trailer bills to make sure that everyone gets what we need. They're continuing to monitor legislation, so you can go to CalCog and look at all the things that they oppose or seeking modifications on or the items that they support. And then we were scheduled to have our regional meeting here last year at the Riverside Convention Center. That will take place in 2022, so they're going to continue that. The Convention Center was very good during the COVID, and they allowed them to reschedule it, so it will be here March of next year. And then they decided to elect me as the VP. So.
Okay.
Thank you.
Crystal, do you have one on Sandbag?
No.
No report? Is Mr. Hoffman on the line?
I am here, Chairman.
Good. You have a report on
Yeah.
OWOW
Yes,
and
I do.
Topper?
Yes, on OWA. I attended the June 24th workshop for the Integrated Regional Water Management process, where they're going to start talking about the new grants coming up for round 2 of Proposition 1 monies. So for those agencies that are looking to develop water projects that are in the Sopwith area in the region, as soon as the Department of Water and Resources gives their final guidelines, I would suggest that they go through and apply for these. Like I said, it'll be out. It should be out in August. We're going to have a meeting that's going to be on July 22nd. We're going to discuss some of it, and then the virtual workshop that's going to be held on August 26th to get additional feedback, and then they're going to be taking recommendations, and they're going to be calling for the projects from October of this year all the way to January of 22nd. So I really would suggest that agencies looking to get into projects that will fit into this, they should take advantage of it. Especially our disadvantaged communities, there's a special section on there for them. And that's it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hoffman. Okay, AQMD, Mr. Benoit.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Nothing to report this month as we're dark the month of July.
Okay. Anybody from SCAG on any of the committees or any of the regional council? Anybody have a report? I just want to say the green print item that was on the agenda was continued. Those of you who are aware, I do know that BIA was having a challenge. It's fixable. It's just getting everybody on the same page and talking. It's the partner to a lot of the RTRP along with some of the planning. So that item is continued for 30 days, although we're dark, so it won't be 60 days. So I just want everybody to know if you've heard about that. If you want more information, you can talk to anybody that's on the regional council or look online, Google. Okay, next is from the chair, which is me. We normally have the chair just pick for the admin and finance, and I just wanted people to let me know in the next week if they're interested in serving. We may look at everybody. So if you're already on it, I do need you to email me and let me know you're interested to stay on the committee, because there's only so many slots, but we're going to look at who's on there and kind of see if there's somebody new that wants to be involved, and look at how many years so that we can make sure that we give everybody an opportunity. And if you do, why don't you copy Janice, just in case it gets lost. Hers doesn't get lost. I'm going to give you my direct email, which will go straight to me, and that is kssspiegel@rivco.org. And then Janice's. So if you guys can do that within a week so that we can prepare. So this next committee meeting, which is next week, will be the existing, this week, Wednesday, will be the existing committee, and then we'll transition at the next meeting so that we can have time to reorganize. And maybe it'll stay the same, don't know. I just saw Jackie's hand come up. Yes?
And admin and finance is dark in August, so that next meeting will be in September.
Well, we can still meet if they want to.
Absolutely.
Okay, and I have nothing else. I'm just looking forward to a year that's gonna beat last year's, huh, Kevin? Not too hard. Well, we have your first report.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. So first, I'd like to start off by thanking the WRCOG staff, the small but mighty WRCOG staff, not only for the work that they do every day, but for the work that they did along with county staff to put this together. So in-person meetings, you know, they're pretty normal. We're used to them, not a big deal. Doing this as a hybrid format is very difficult for the back end, for all the folks between the COG staff and the county staff who are doing that. So I'd like to thank them for all their hard work in doing that. Next, I'd like to point out that while I'm, all of 2 weeks in, I am no longer the newest WRCOG employee. So as you went through your conversations on TUMP, one of the people listening in was Carlos, who is a new TUMP analyst who began today. And just to give you a little bit about sort of what I'm up to and what I need from you. So first, my first takeaways of early projects that I'm anxious to work on are things like a fiscal long-range forecasting plan. There are a number of processes I'd like to sort of pay some attention to and have heard from some of you that you would like me to pay some attention to with some of our internal processes, internal controls, procurement, some of those sorts of things, and some things around the sustainability of the organization. Just making sure that we're in a spot that's going to be strong and stable and provide the long-term benefits that each of you expect from us. I am told that I get to sort of mix up my office work later this week. I get the, we'll say, privilege of hanging out in the middle of the night with our RCHCA folks trapping kangaroo rats. So I'm really excited about that part there. But I really want to focus a lot on sort of yesterday, today, and tomorrow. So yesterday meaning sort of understanding a little bit more about why WRCOG was formed, the intent, the purpose, all those sorts of things, and then where we are today, not only from the staff perspective, but also from the board perspective and our stakeholders to get a better sense of where we are. That gives me a better idea of what our resources look like and what's available. And the first part that I really need from you is to understand your vision a little bit better. If we can figure out what your vision is and sort of get that down on paper, then we've got a team full of capable staff who are very anxious to carry out your vision. But I think it'll do us a lot of good to get a better sense of what that actually looks like going forward. I'm also going to need a lot of information from you about your communication preferences. I recognize many of you have incredibly busy schedules. So on one hand, from the staff side, we're so proud of everything we're doing. We want you to know all about it. On the other hand, we know you've got other things. So individually, trying to figure out what that part is going to look like. And we have some partnership opportunities we're hoping to sort of lean on you for, particularly in the area of training. I know a number of you have some very robust training programs within your own internal staff, and we may be seeing if you would not mind letting us sort of crash the party a little bit to take advantage of some of those things. So I'm happy to be here. I agree with the comments that WRCOG is in a very strong place and has a very strong future, and I'm very pleased to be a part of it.
Thank you. Okay, now we are looking for any items that people have for future agenda. Okay. Guess we're not meeting anymore, huh? Just kidding. Just kidding. General announcements. I was looking right at you. Why didn't you just say something? Supervisor Hewitt.
You have to push the button. That's
You push
the
mine.
protocol. This isn't an announcement. This is more of a comment. Ever since Chris Gray has come into this organization, I've beat him up pretty bad. I've gone hard on him. I mean, from day one when he replaced Ruth. And I got to tell you this. What he did when he stepped up and took that interim director spot in an almost impossible situation. And he carried himself with grace. And I'm a huge fan in so many ways of yours, Chris. And I'm telling you what, I don't think anybody could have done that as well as you did. And for that, I got a lot of respect for you. Doesn't mean I'm going to quit beating up on you. But you're one of my favorite when it comes to really giving it all. Good job.
Thank you for sharing that. I think many of us have that same feeling, so thank you for speaking. Anybody else? Any announcements or comments? Anybody on the phone?
I see no requests, but City of Norco, do you have anything to comment?
No.
You are unmuted. Just checking, sir. I see no requests.
Okay, with that, we will adjourn this meeting until, I thought you said we don't have meetings in August.
Administration and Finance Committee is dark in August. Executive Committee will meet in August.
Got it. Okay, so August 2nd, we'll be back here at 2 o'clock. Hopefully everybody will be here. Have a good week.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.